who, when, why, where, and how of my worship. I could take a long time. Let me take it as my worship and just tell you a story about part of my journey to understand and practice the worship of God. I find praise, the concepts of praise and thanksgiving, quite straightforward to my modern mind. But having been brought up in a secular, scientific sort of way, I found the idea of worship really quite difficult to grasp. It felt to me there should be more emotion in it than simple praise and thanksgiving. But anyway, I learned a bit as I went along. And I knew the Bible quite thoroughly by the time this happened, but I've discovered a question and then sought the answer and then looked at how I could apply that to my own life of worship. And that's what I want to share with you now. The question occurred when I was reading that well-known passage about Jesus and the woman at the well. We all know that Jesus said how important it was to worship the Lord in spirit and in truth. And that's the bit you always focus on, rightly so in the passage. But I was reading it again for the nth time, and I suddenly realized that they were speaking before it had been really understood about worshipping the Lord in spirit and in truth. And what was the woman meaning when she said, we worship here and you worship there? What did she have in mind, and what did Jesus understand by that? I suddenly thought, I don't know what they were talking about. And I knew that the Greek word was proskuneo, so I went on a journey to try to understand that and the meaning of worship, both in the Old Testament and the New Testament. So I'd heard that it meant to move towards, to kiss. There are two parts to the Greek word proskuneo, towards kiss. And it didn't seem quite right that would be what Jesus and the woman had in mind. So I looked up in my rather older concordance, sort of 19th century, and it talked about to kiss the hand towards. I thought, how very 19th century. And then I thought what I'd been taught about moving towards the kiss to be very late 20th century free love type of thing. And that didn't seem quite right either. So I looked at the biblical references, and I found that around the word worship, you frequently get references to bowing down and to kneeling. So I began to think about this. In fact, the one where it really comes together is Psalm 95, where it says, "Come, let us worship and bow down and kneel before the Lord our Maker." But you also, for instance, get when the wise men come to the infant Jesus, they offer their gifts, and then it says they bowed down and worshipped him. So there are lots of references to this. And around the same time, I was reading a book where the traveller had gone to some Eastern churches in the Middle East, where they have a long, old tradition. And he found that as part of their meetings, it was most strange to him, they did this. They might have been standing up and they got down on their knees. They put their hands flat on the floor and put their forehead to the ground, bowing down on their knees, face to the floor. And his conclusion was that this was an early form of Christian worship. And it really chimed with what I'd read in the Bible about what the meaning of that word, basically, the word worship, was about. You see, you can do that in the body without the spirit and deceptively, not in truth. but the Father is wanting us to do it in spirit and in truth. So what does that mean? What did it mean for me? I began to think about that posture and make it very personal. Sometimes now in my worship, I actually use that posture in my room on my own. I bow my knee before God. I put my face to the earth. What I began to understand is that proskuneo, if it meant to kiss towards, if anything, it was to kiss the earth towards the object of your worship. There's such humility in that posture. There's such acknowledgement of the greatness of the one you are bowing before, to an extent where in our Western society we wouldn't dream of doing this to anybody. There are parts of the world where this is still used to human beings. So I began to see that it's also an attitude of surrender. You are completely, when you're bowed down like that, head on the floor, you are completely at the mercy of the one you are worshipping. They could kneel on your neck. They could, if they've got a sword, cut off your head and you wouldn't be able to see it or defend yourself. So this is something of what I began to understand, and something that has informed my own worship since then. Learning to do this, not in the body, and not just for show, but somehow to do this, to give myself, to offer myself to the Lord in this sort of way, but in spirit and in truth. So I'd say, come, let us worship and bow down. Let us kneel in spirit and in truth before the Lord our God. For he is our God, and we are the sheep of his pasture.